Have we
Hi.
met? Have we met? Uh,
I don't know. Do I know you, sir?
have we met? Have I been pleased to make your acquaintance?
I think you have.
Um,
Hey,
hey,
back. It's been a minute,
mm,
but we here.
we here. We are
Bobo,
here.
Bobo talking about something y'all new here. Look, don't do us, Bobo. Don't do us. It's the
Mm,
beginning of the school year and there was a lot going on. Okay,
mm,
don't do us. Hey,
mm.
everybody, come on in. Come on in. Yes, the doctor feels better, y'all. The doctor feels better. You know, intro. I'm gonna keep playing that 30 seconds because he hates it. I should play it again. I'm just saying.
I'm not thinking about you.
What's up, people? Now we almost on winter break. Don't do me, Vovo. Don't
Okay,
do
it is almost winter break.
don't do it. Listen, y'all. Look, y'all know the beginning of the school year. It is a lot going on. It is a lot going on. Okay. But we are here and we apologize that it's been such a long break. Des, we have to get you up here. What's up, dishing with Des? One of our
Did act like he'd be scared to come up here with us. He do. He be acting like he's scared to come up here with us. You ain't got to
so
be like.
first of all, I want to say before we get into our stories, I do want to acknowledge some things that are happening, especially in my area specifically. So I want to send prayers out to the family, the academic family, the families of the students at Morgan State University and Bowie State University, where we have had acts of violence over the last week to the point where, for the first time in the history of the school, Morgan State canceled homecoming. And El Teddy and I were talking about that on last week. Um, First of all, I have a lot of friends that graduated from Morgan, and so I know that hit them. That hit them a different way. I know, but to understand the level of what goes into a homecoming, especially at HBCU um, homecoming, um, that had to be a very, very, very heavy decision for the president of Morgan State to have to make. I don't know about you, El Teddy. I mean, we talked
Yeah,
about it
it's
all.
kind of. I can't even imagine. Like it's really unimaginable. There would have to be. I mean, it's so unimaginable. I could really see a school saying we're going to push through just so that the people don't think that they have stopped us from, you know, being able to proceed that and to have that be a time to galvanize the student body or the family of that university because you got alumni coming along with the current student body. I can really see that as a time to circle the wagons and really love on each other as a family. And
Yeah,
so that part I could see doing, but just even the financial impact that has on
yeah, the financial.
and HBU
Yeah,
specifically because we know classics as well as homecoming uh, fund a great
yeah,
portion of the coffers
yeah.
for an HBCU. So that is yeah, I can't even imagine.
And then on Monday there was an act of violence over the weekend at Bowie State University, and so they canceled classes on Monday. Now, for a lot of people, Monday was already a holiday, so that did not affect as much. But again, I have to give kudos to the president and the administration at Bowie to say we need time, we need to regroup, and we need time. The one thing I'll say, and this is just my opinion, I don't know this to be a fact. I feel like the Baltimore City slash County Police Department may have had some information that they didn't share with the public that um, sort of pushed the president into making that hard decision. Again, I go to Jiho, which if you don't know what that is the greatest homecoming on earth, and the yard
Oh
is
dear God.
shoulder The yard is shoulder to shoulder. I mean, literally, you are walking past the yard like this. Like you are literally walking like this through the yard. And I can only imagine if there would be a stampede if just the thought of a pow pow happening. You know what I mean? So again, we just wanted to acknowledge that before we moved into our stories. Well, good for you, Des. Des said he's in public health now. Well, look, can I send you my resume? Anyway, moving on. I also want to give a shout out to my alma mater, Bennett College, which celebrated this weekend their 150 years. It was Founders Day weekend. And it was okay. It was a great, great, great time. They invited back the past presidents. They invited back. It was the coordination. Founders Day is when we always coordinate our court, our Miss Bennett and her court, and so they invited back past Miss Bennett's, and my really good friend of mine was the guest speaker for Vespers, and so I just want to give a shout out to my alma mater, Bennett College. So I am not an Aggie. Well, yeah, I am an Aggie. I took classes at A&T, but I did not graduate from A&T. But Bennett is across the street, and I promise you, I spent as much time at A&T as I did Bennett. But that's another conversation for another day. All right, don't look at me like that. Why are you
I
making that face?
I didn't say anything.
Are you hating? My little cousin went to ASU, so yes, go Rams. All right,
I thought Alabama State was last
no,
weekend. I could be wrong. It's probably this week. I think Tuskegee was last weekend, and
well,
Alabama State the weekend
Sylvia
this
say that's
weekend.
her homecoming. She said
No, she
ASU is her
probably right.
homecoming.
She probably right because I know. I think Tuskegee was
I
last
know
weekend.
Tuskegee was this weekend because Lionel Richie was down there. They
Hmm.
dedicated a statue to him, and so I know Lionel Richie and Katy Perry were down there. Um, Somebody else's was
Oh,
this
she said
weekend. I just
Albany State, not Alabama State.
Oh, my bad,
Okay,
Albany State. Oh, my bad, my
I'm
bad.
sorry,
Okay,
not Albany. They call it
okay,
Albany. You
VSU.
know,
All right, well, go ahead and shout out in the chat. Go on and shout out y'all HBCUs in the chat.
Virginia
Go
State.
on.
I was wasn't I close to Virginia State? No, I was very close to
You were,
VCU.
but you weren't.
I was
If you
close
had
to
driven,
VCU,
yeah, if you
right?
had driven, you probably would have. Yeah, 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 yeah.
No, I'm saying I was in South Richmond when I first got there. So I think I
Oh,
saw
okay.
VCU. I think I saw stuff from
Yeah,
VCU.
you probably saw VCU.
Hmm.
But Virginia State's not that far. I don't think it's that far. And then, Norfolk State is a little bit further down the road. But yeah, 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 yeah.
I'll be at
Dad
FAMU
says I'm gonna
homecoming
sit
in
in my
2 weeks.
PWR corner.
I'll be at FAMU homecoming in 2 weeks.
I'm sure you will. I'm
In
sure
my
you will. All
mind.
right, let's get to it. So look, so we did all of that and we back where we started, you guys. We've taken a break. We have given everybody time to get their life together. Yet we come back to you guys and we are right back in Texas. We are right back in Texas. Oh, that reminds me, I have something to tell you, El Teddy, that I spoke to yeah, just remind me, I gotta tell you something. All right.
Okay.
Now we have 3 stories that we're gonna bring you guys today. And immediately following this live, El Teddy is gonna go live over on his channel. You guys know where the place is, but if not, we'll drop the link before we get off of here. And then yeah, so you guys can go and check out what he's talking about. Is it a run your mouth or is it a politics of it all?
We have a run your mouth,
All
but
right, we
we'll
got
do
to run
some
your mouth
politics,
today
of
over on
course.
El Teddy.
We'll
So
do some
listen,
politics, of course. So
okay. So here's the thing, you guys. With that being said, we have 3 stories to bring you today. 2 of which come out of
we
the
have
state.
4.
All right, I'll double check. I saw 3. I'll double check the 4th one. 2 come out of the state of Texas. The 3rd one is dealing with LGBTQ sex education, and the 4th one I have to look because I ain't see it. All right.
I think the
Where you
fourth
want to
one, the
start?
picture didn't come
Where do
up.
you want to start?
Let's go to Governor Hot Wheels now. I think the fourth one, the picture didn't come up, so it might have blended with the other ones.
Okay, all right. Let's start in Texas. Now, you guys know that we are keeping a running total. We are almost at the end of the year. We are keeping a running total of the states in which our stories come from. And I just have to let you guys know that Florida is winning by a landslide. I just have to be honest and tell you, Florida is winning by a landslide.
I mean, there's still time for Governor Hot Wheels
I
to
mean,
catch
listen,
up.
he is not to be outdone. Okay, he is not to be outdone. All right, you guys. So, let's start with this. You want to start with the voucher scam because we've been telling y'all about these vouchers. Is that where you want
Yeah,
to
we
start?
have. Yeah, we let's go to the vouchers.
Okay. Now we have been telling you guys about these vouchers. Listen, I taught in DCPS, and baby, those vouchers were a whole situation. Probably about 15 years ago in DC, and we talked about the voucher system down in Texas. We've been giving. Listen, you guys can go back and there's been a couple of stories as it relates to the voucher system. So let's talk about what's going on because it may be coming around the mountain. It may be coming around the mountain. As always, I'm going to read through the article. I put the link in the chat so you can follow along. You have it for reference. This article is coming from the Dallas Observer. It is dated October the 10th of 2023. Voucher scams. Abbott Education Savings Account threatens another Republican civil war. The Republicans got a whole lot of fires burning, don't they, El Teddy?
Yes, they do. They
Okay.
absolutely do.
Yeah, they do. All right, let me get through this, you guys. When Texas Governor Greg Abbott finally called a special legislative session to begin on October the 9th, he followed through on a promise or a threat, depending on your view, to bring state lawmakers back to battle on a hill he's clearly willing to die on: school vouchers. In true GOP fashion, Abbott has used his trusty Republican talent for branding when touting his voucher like plan around the state over the past many months. It's parental choice or school choice. He says he's looking to give families educational savings accounts, not school vouchers. And again, we've already talked about where this money allegedly is coming from and all of that, and it really is just school vouchers. You can put lipstick on a pig and it's still a pig. It's likely not a stretch to say the difference is because educational savings accounts hasn't become a political lightning rod term the way school vouchers has over the years. Unlike so many other bills debated in the House, this one isn't terribly complicated. Abbott wants state money to be made available for private education. As each year of Abbott's lengthy gubernatorial term has passed, he's grown more vocal in his support of school vouchers and more critical of public schools for what he sees as a growing liberal influence over students. Although teachers' raises were discussed during the ADA session, one with a historically large surplus, raises did not come to fruition. Although a small one-time bonus was okayed for all teachers, it's also noteworthy that Abbott has had to scratch and claw his way through an entire session and now a special session for a program that many Republicans are in favor of, at least in some form. Given how GOP has a stranglehold on Texas politics for generations now, the population has grown accustomed to the pet causes of Abbott and Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick being passed relatively easily, while items they're not fond of, such as anything relating to cannabis, gambling, or LGBTQ rights, rarely makes it beyond the basic filing stage. Complicating things for Abbott, however, is the increasing bitter Republican war in Texas. And here we get to the meat and potatoes, ladies and gentlemen. Even before the nation got a look at the battle between House Republicans who wanted to expel Attorney General, Ken Paxton, and we covered that as well, and state Republicans who almost unanimously chose not to, Abbott and Patrick waged a more contentious battle than we have previously seen when they endorsed dueling property tax reduction plans. On top of that, state Republican lawmakers in rural districts have expressed their resistance to voucher programs for quite some time. Public schools are the beating hearts in small towns where the population is only in 3 or 4 or 5 digits, thanks as much to the number of people whose schools employ as anything else. Take money away from those entities, and it doesn't take much for an elected official to see their days could be numbered. There's no such conflict in the Democratic Party regarding school vouchers. Voucher programs have always been off the table, and Abbott's elementary savings account program is simply another name for something that families can already afford to pay for private schools will be most likely able to take advantage of. Senate Bill 8, which would allow for families to have an education savings account of $8,000 per student, passed in the Senate but failed to make it through the House during the regular session earlier this year. Though it's called a savings account, the $8,000 would actually come from state funds provided to eligible students. It's a straight up subsidy, in other words, or a voucher. The $8,000 amount makes it easy for opponents of voucher programs to shoot holes through the governor's notion of providing choice. According to the Education Data Initiative, the average cost of private school tuition in Texas is little over $10,000 per year. For families living paycheck to paycheck, by and large, even that $8,000 head start isn't enough for them to choose to send a child to private school over the nearest public school. Critics point out that $8,000 will merely serve to provide a discount to the families already equipped to pay for private school tuition. In addition, private schools need not accept just anyone who might be able to afford tuition, including students with special needs, nor are they subject to many of the same laws, regulatory standards that public schools are. All these reasons and others are why Dallas State Senator Royce West referred to any voucher plan as a welfare or private schools during a Monday press conference in Austin. In February, the State Board of Education member Aisha Davis, I'm going to say that's, yeah, who represents parts of Tarrant and Dallas counties, took exception to the school choice branding voucher proponents have employed. It's just a name to make it sound like it's not as bad as it is. There's no way the voucher system that's being talked about will ever give true choice to all parents. There's not going to be enough money for any and all parents to take a voucher and go to private school. It won't work like that. Since the governor released his agenda for the special session last week, there's been no shortage of heat thrown his way. On Monday, the Texas Tribune reported that should Abbott be unhappy with how the special session goes, he might go after Republicans who did not back his plan with their upcoming primaries. It's something Paxton has already vowed to do against the Republicans who voted to impeach him last month. Lord. All right, you guys, we're almost done. Senate Rep. Victoria Neve Serrato is opposed to Abbott's voucher plan. Keeping Texas at the forefront of the global economy requires additional investment in our neighborhood schools, teachers, and kids, not voucher scams that defund our public schools. The representative from Mesquite wrote in a small email to the Observer, Latino students comprise the majority of kids in Texas public schools. And this attack by the governor and lieutenant governor on our schools and teachers is an attack on all of us. Along with his voucher program, Abbott announced the special session would tackle further border security measures and seek to end all COVID-related restrictions. The Texas Democratic Party didn't care much for the items the governor wants the legislature to work on this week. Not a single priority proposed by Greg Abbott helps ease the day-to-day lives of working Texas families, says Democratic Party Chairman Gilberto Hinojosa said in a statement. While Texas Republicans work to defund public schools and turn our southern border into a war zone, Democrats in the Texas House will propose data-driven legislation that champions communities, addresses the shortfalls of our education and immigration systems head-on, not divert funds from struggling schools to other state agencies to fund swanky private schools that are run by shady billionaires. Not shady billionaires, though. Upon adjournment of Monday's special session proceedings, Senate Democrats held a press conference with Senator Carol Alvarado of Harris County, repeatedly referring to Abbott's plan as a voucher scheme. Senator Nathan Johnson, a Democrat from Dallas, provided closing remarks at the press conference where he echoed his colleague's sentiment. This isn't about parental choice or school choice or even about facts, Johnson said, before explaining that he endorses a plan to increase the basic allotment per student, give teachers a paid parental leave, and base school funding on enrollment and attendance. We're spending all of our time talking about these voucher scams and not the things that actually help. Doc?
Well. What we have here is a little of what's going on in Washington, D.C., here in Austin, Texas. Republicans are at a civil war. These people are infighting. The Democrats are just sitting back like, y'all got it.
Right.
Y'all control everything.
We're
Y'all
gonna pop some
have at it.
popcorn and keep an eye on what y'all got going on.
Well, we had the situation with the lieutenant, I mean, not lieutenant governor, the attorney general, where you have wholehearted, full throated, actual sexual misconduct going on. All types of horrible things. And the House Republicans, I should say, voted to remove him from office. The Senate Republicans said, yeah, we ain't gonna have no parts of that, and unanimously voted to keep him. So now we have House Republicans on this side, Senate Republicans on this side. Now, the reason that I'm bringing that up is that's painting the picture of where these people fall in line. Because Greg Abbott is here with the House, I mean, the Senate Republicans wants all parts of what they got going on. These are the people. Here's what we have here: the rich people making themselves richer. Rich people basically using your tax funds to put into their pockets. That's all it is, wholeheartedly, full throated. It is rich, and it is the governor sanctioning taking taxpayer dollars and putting it into the pockets of rich, wealthy people. Because let's be clear, those private schools, it's not like if you show up with the voucher, the private school has to take you. They still have their own selection process of who they are and who they are not going to accept into their private school. And please be clear, these people are going to choose the richest and whitest and families that have already either have name notoriety, maybe they've already contributed to that school. You may have already been attending that school for X amount of years, and they're just using that to go into their pocket. Well, we're already paying $20,000 a year. Yeah, let me go ahead and take this $8,000. That'll fund our vacation, during Christmas break or something like that. It's a clear cut free $8,000 for you to do whatever you want to do with if you're rich and white. Because how many of these private schools you really think are going to accept black kids from out of a an inner city school?
And
None.
the reality is, we know that there have been some success stories, right? There have been some success. I have friends who have been able to benefit from a voucher program. However, the overall, the overall situation when it comes to vouchers is that they, especially the way Greg Abbott is, you heard in the article, the way Greg Abbott is setting it up, it's not to help those students.
It's not. And they even talked about how most of the private schools already cost in excess of $10,000. So $8,000 ain't helping you. I mean, it's all some more. And then here's the most egregious part: y'all got all of this money to give to rich people. How about using some of that money to do real pay raises for teachers, so that you could probably get more quality teachers in public education, which will probably raise the educational, raise the level of education in these respective districts, and then eliminate the whole reason for you to have these voucher systems and things like that. And then my last point is, I hate this whole notion of, well, if it's a private school, it must be better. Well, all private schools are not better than public schools. All private schools don't pass the litmus test. I mean, it's just not how that works. And there is grooming and indoctrination that goes on at a lot of these private schools. If you think they're cutting Black history out of public schools, what the hell do you think is going on at private schools that have nobody ever telling them what they should or should not be teaching?
Well, I
Go ahead.
mean, I
I
told you
mean,
guys, listen, I've told you guys this story before. I went to a private high school that was predominantly white. It was a Catholic school. And I remember, I think I've told you guys this story before, that I had my history teacher tell me white woman from Connecticut tell me that she didn't feel like Malcolm X was an influential black person in American history. So, I mean, that was my experience. So, anyway,
Hmm.
moving forward. Moving
God.
forward. Do you want to stay in Texas because we've been talking about teacher
I
raises,
think
and we
that
do have an
second one is
article.
an update to, remember we were talking about that second one, I think is the update from Houston.
Okay. So yeah, Houston IDS, which Houston IDS has been cutting up. Okay.
Right.
They're now
Remember we talked about the whole story with them and the teachers, for the special ed students.
uh-huh. Yeah. Oh yeah. All right. Again, putting the link in the chat. Hey to everybody. I'm not ignoring anyone. Hey everybody, thank you all for being here. Please hit the like button, share us out, share us out, share us out. And if you're new here, go ahead and subscribe. So here's an update to a story that we've done. This is dated October the 6th of 2023. This is from Houston Public Media. And the article is titled Houston ISD Makes Changes to Teacher Stipends and Overtime Pay. Teachers across Houston ISD received emails this week informing them that they will not be receiving overtime pay for extra hours worked this school year, as they have in past years. The news came alongside changes to some stipends in the district. This summer, state-appointed Superintendent Mike Miles said that he would not change the district's compensation manual other than to increase pay for teachers as the district's new education system campuses. At the district, excuse me. The manual has not changed, Miles says. I've done nothing to the manual. However, according to this year's version, stipends for positions that are hard to fill, like special education and high school math and science, have been slashed by thousands of dollars. Last year, special education teachers who filled such positions received $5,000 stipends, while high school math and science teachers, along with career and technical education instructors, received stipends of $2,000. This year, however, each of those stipends have been reduced to $1,000. Miles said the cuts are offset by additional stipends given to teachers at new education systems this year. At 85 schools, those changes are because those teachers are getting a $10,000 stipend, and at those 85 schools, but $1,000 teachers got a $15,000 increase to their base salary, he said. However, the stipend cuts in the compensation manual will take effect district-wide, not just at the 85 NES campuses. Teachers at other schools will not receive a raise, an additional $10,000 to offset cuts to their stipends. Meanwhile, teachers around the district received emails this week indicating they should not expect overtime pay this year. Teachers in HISD are professional and exempt employees, he said. The email read, for exempt staff, completion of work assignment is a primary emphasis. Since there is no overtime pay for exempt staff, the number of hours of secondary importance. It went on to explain that overtime pay is not required by federal law or local policy, as it the discretion of campus leadership. Miles said when it comes to overtime pay, he's trying to change the mentality in the district. He is trying to change. Okay, I'm sorry. Let me get back. That one hit me for a second. Okay. Teachers teach. They are exempt. I'm sorry. Teachers teach and they are exempt employees. That's the job. We are not clocking in and clocking out, people, he said. There is no culture where we're going to pay teachers overtime hours for doing their job. Miles
Wow.
said that the general and new compensation manual applies to all teachers, including those who signed their contracts before this year's manual was released. Oh, that's dirty. Generally speaking, the compensation manual is the compensation manual for all teachers, said Miles. He added that teachers who do overtime work that involves an additional role, such as coaching in school sports teams, will receive additional compensation. Go ahead. I have some thoughts, but go ahead.
Here's the smoke and mirrors. The smoke and mirrors is the people that's in that new education, whatever new education system.
Yeah.
Cut those campuses. They gave these teachers an extra 10 to 15,000, right? What
Mm-hmm.
what it gets lost in the sauce is all of the things, and we did a whole show where we went through all of the things that they were giving up. Remember, we went through all of the things that they were giving up. All of the there's just, and I won't go through it, but it's a whole grocery list of things that are being given up that no teacher anywhere would even agree to giving up. And so basically, what you do is you sell your soul to the devil for this 10 or 15 grand. When at the end of the year, you look at yourself and say, what the hell was I thinking? And then I almost might go along with him if he said this is for the teachers in this particular that signed up for this particular new education system school, whatever the NES schools, because
Yeah,
they're already getting 10 or 15 grand extra and they signed their life away to the devil when they decided to stay at those schools.
yeah.
But you are subjecting people not at those schools to that. And that's the most egregious part. It's a slap in the face for you to tell people who normally sometimes work 80 to 100 hours a week, many cases are only getting paid for about 32 because most schools don't have an 8 hour program. So in a lot of cases, you're you're only on the school site for about 33, 30 to 35 hours teaching a week. But my point is the amount of prep that you do outside of working hours, the amount of hours in the day you spend doing all types of things like lesson plans, grading papers, calling parents, doing asinine ass reports, and in all kinds of other meetings is crazy. I'll give you a perfect example, really big. You know this happens all the time. They tout, oh, but you have a free period, a planning period, or whatever your district calls it, right? And then they end up taking that whole free period for you to where you got to be in a meeting with a whole bunch of other people, and now you get nothing done. And now that whole free period that they told you was going to have, you never even have. Then when you do say, well, maybe I should stay after school for an hour today to, maybe get some grades done. Now they call in a meeting. Now we got a faculty meeting. Now we got a school advisory council meeting. Now we got all types of all types of stuff that they create and invent to take up your time. And for you to say teachers teach and teachers are exempt and teachers don't need this extra pay because you go ahead, really, because I'm getting triggered and I might need something.
So, so I have a couple of questions, right? So the first thing is, I agree with you, El Teddy. For the teachers that voluntarily signed up to work at these educational systems, remember again, yes, we did in a previous episode, we did break down what those teachers were actually giving up to work at those sites. Remember, those are also the sites where they're getting rid of the libraries and they're adding more interventions for student behavior, which we discussed. We discussed that as well. If you got a pay raise, which is a reason why a lot of teachers did agree to go to those schools because they were getting a significant pay raise. I mean, when if you're making $70,000 and you move to a different school and you can make $85,000, that's there's incentive, right? I'm okay with those teachers not getting their stipend because I can see the logic. But when you say that affects all of the teachers, regardless of whether they're at that system or that school or not, now I have an issue with it, right? As far as this overtime, I would like to understand what they're calling overtime. And the reason why I say that is because I've never worked at a school where I get quote unquote overtime, not like when I worked in the private sector. So, like when I worked in the private sector, overtime would be, if you get off at 5 and you stay till 7, you get time and a half for those 2 hours. I've never gotten that in a school setting. However, I have always been compensated if I worked in some sort of official system or program. So when I did after school tutoring, when I first started teaching, we they had, this was before No Child Left Behind and all of that. And for our state testing, they had for the kids who didn't do well the year before, they had these programs. I think they called it in DC, they called it like the STAR program or something. And they had teachers working those programs. I got paid extra to do that. When I've done any type of club, if I've sponsored a club, I got paid extra for that. They said that coaches are not exempt, so the coaches are still going to get there. When I coached, I got compensated. So I'm interested in knowing what were the teachers getting paid overtime for before versus what he's taking away, because I've never worked at a school where I get paid to stay after the bell. But if it was an official school program, I did get compensated. But I will say this: if I worked in a school system where I was used to getting compensated, now we have a problem. If it used to be, well, if I stayed until 5 o'clock or 6 o'clock to tutor kids or whatever, and I could get compensated for that, and you're telling me that that's gone, now we have a problem because I was used to getting it. My other question is, it says that he came out with these changes after teachers signed their contracts, which I think
Yep.
is disingenuous. Because again, I know in DC, now while I work, when we got a new contract while I was in DC, one of the things they put in that last contract we had was we had to let the school system know if we plan to come back by a certain date. I forget what that date was, but it was early in the year. It was like March. We had to sign a letter of intent. And if we said we were coming back and we didn't come back, we got a penalty of $100, which doesn't seem like a lot, but it's just stupid. You mean to tell me that if I tell you I was coming back in March and then I resigned in June, that you get to take $100 off my last paycheck? So again, if there's something like that in place where you're almost forcing teachers to sign up or they're going to be penalized, and then you come back later and say, oh, by the way, we're going to take away your stipend. We're going to take away your overtime. Thanks so much. Again, I got problems with the way this is being done. You know, um, and these are the things, like we talk about a teacher shortage and teacher retention. Hello, these are the things that make teachers say, screw it. Like, these are the things that make teachers walk away.
Absolutely.
That's Texas, y'all. Those two articles came from the great state of Texas.
The great state of Texas,
Listen.
governed by Governor Hot Wheels.
Okay. This last article is going to probably interest you, Des, based on what you said you're doing now in your new capacity. Again, there's another example of a teacher we lost. We lost a great young teacher, Black man in the classroom working with our students with special needs, and he left education. I'm not going to tell his story, but we talked offline, and I understand why he walked away. But again, this is what we're dealing with. I know principals. I have friends that are principals. I even have a friend that's an assistant, like superintendent, and they are begging for teachers. They are begging for teachers. They can't. They can't. They can't staff their schools. They can't staff their schools. All right. Here's the next article that we have, you guys, and this is dealing with LGBTQIA sex education. Oh, my bad. This is coming from the Associated Press, and this article is dated. Looking for the date. Oh, it is dated October the 7th, 2023. It's coming out of Phoenix. In 5th grade, Stella Gage's class watched a video about puberty. In 9th grade, a few sessions of her health class was dedicated to the risk of sexual behaviors. That was the extent of her sex education in high school. At no point were there any content that felt especially relevant to her identity as a queer teenager. To fill the gaps, she turned mostly to social media. My parents were mostly absent, my peers were not mature enough, and I didn't have anyone else to turn to, said Gage, who is now a sophomore at Wichita State University in Kansas. Many LGBTQIA plus students say they have not felt represented in sex education classes. To learn about their identities and how to build healthy, safe relationships, they often have to look elsewhere. As lawmakers in some states limit what can be taught about sex and gender, it will be that much more difficult for those students to come by inclusive material in their classrooms. New laws targeting LGBTQIA people have been have been proliferating in GOP-led states. Some elected officials, including candidates for the Republican presidential nomination, have been pushing to remove LGBTQ plus content from classrooms. Sex education curriculum varies widely. Some groups, including Planned Parenthood, have called for sex education to be inclusive of LGBTQ plus students, but some states outright forbid such an approach. The penal code in Texas, oh Lord, there we go. There's Texas. The penal code in Texas, for one, still says curriculum developed by the Department of State Health Services must say homosexuality is not acceptable and is a criminal offense, even though such language was deemed unconstitutional by the U.S. Supreme Court in 2003. Attempts at the legislature to remove that line from the state law have failed. In practice, LGBTQ plus students say they have looked elsewhere for sex education. Some described watching their peers turn to pornography, and others said they watched videos on YouTube about how to tell if someone is gay and how to flirt with people of the same sex. Gage grew up in Oklahoma before her military family relocated, and she spent, pop up ad. Okay. Um, and she spent her 8th and 9th grade years in a U.S. Department of Defense school in the Netherlands. She then finished high school in Kansas, where she began to recognize she wasn't attracted to only men. Not seeing a safe outlet at her high school to explore who she went online to research for herself the history of the LGBTQ plus community in the U.S. I started to realize there is a huge portion of our history that is conveniently left out. But that history is important to queer youth, she said. She never really questioned gender or social norms, she said, until she started to learn about discrimination others have faced throughout history. We have such rigid boxes that we expect people to fit into. If you don't fit, you were called slurs. I wasn't really that if you strayed from those norms that people would feel you were attacking their way of life. Still, the internet contains vast amount of false information. Some advocates worry students turning to the internet to fill gaps in sex education will struggle to find their way through the Morse. At any time you have a political controversy, there's a greater potential for a lot more disinformation to be generated, says Peter Adams, Senior Vice President of Research and Design at the New Literacy Project. When schools address sexuality, it is often in the context of disease prevention or anti-bullying programs. School can be a difficult place if your identity is seen only in such negative ways, says Tim West, teacher and now executive director of the LGBTQ at the National Center for Civil and Human Rights in Atlanta. West can relate. He grew up in Arkansas as a queer Black kid and a preacher's son and was constantly made to feel ashamed. What if you were a boy in high school that knows you like boys and you sit in a divided room and listen to a teacher explain how not to have sex with girls? You wouldn't be sitting there rolling your eyes because this is not your issue. But you also haven't been given any instructions on how to protect yourself should you experiment with a person of the same gender. Students need more applicable sex education, regardless of their gender identity or expression, said Gage, who volunteers with a youth justice advocacy program and is also president of the Planned Parenthood Generation Action Chapter in Wichita, Kansas. We all have to make large decisions for ourselves about our sexuality and reproductive health. Those decisions should be grounded in knowledge, she said. Growing up in Washington, D.C., Ashton Gerber had more sex education classes than most, but Gerber, who is transgender, said the lessons weren't all that applicable to their experience. Even if you can have sex education every day of the year, there's always going to be something that gets left out. Gerber, who was a student at Tufts University in Massachusetts, Gerber said that educators should point students to trusted online resources so they can do their own research. Not knowing who you are is a horrible feeling many LGBTQ plus students wrestle with, Gage said, but equally horrible is not feeling accepted once you do understand your sexual identity. Had I known then what I know now, I would have felt safe and confident coming out sooner. No one should feel like they don't understand themselves because we are forced to conformity in a world that doesn't care. We can all be inclusive. Doc.
There's a lot of and there's a lot going on here. There's a lot of angles here. Um, I grew up during the time when I was young. I remember when they first started sex education in my county. I think I was in like fifth or sixth grade. Um, I think they introduced it in when I was in fifth grade, and then in sixth grade it was a section of our science class, but there was no mention. Please be clear, zero mention of anything, even remotely LGBTQI. No, nothing. They talked about coitus. They talked about girls getting their period, boys having wet dreams, how to put on a condom. They put up the anatomic, you know, science figure where they show, and that was pretty much, you know, it girls have penises, boys have vaginas, and they fit into each other. That was pretty much it. And my generation, and I'm telling this story for a reason. My generation, we grew up not knowing who we are, struggling internally with what was going on, fighting all of that. But what we had, this is pre, internets and pre people being able to go and Google something. What we did have was once you did get become an adult and you became a part of the community, we did have that community setting where the elders in the community would say, "Come in, let me talk to you," and they would bring you in. And families and houses wasn't just in the ballroom community; it was just widespread throughout, especially in the black gay community. They were there to help you out, and so they would show you the way. Here's what you're feeling. Nothing's wrong with how you feel. They would even teach you some things sexually that you needed to know and what to look for. Baby, don't go in there. He ain't got the lights on because you don't know what he got, and you need to be able to see, little things like that. I don't want to go too gory and too graphic, but different things that you needed to learn. Fast forward to now, and I'm going there for a reason. Now, a lot of the generation, they want no parts of that type of community within the LGBTQ plus community. Why? Because they have outlets like the internet and they feel like, well, anything I need to know, I can go to the internet and search for. The pushback on that is you're not getting it in school anymore, like just like we didn't. But some of the places and spaces on Al Gore's good internet where you are going to go seek out this information are not the best places for you. And that's not to say that every place back in the day was good. I'm not saying that. But really be a lot of the places and spaces, if you're telling me, well, my only recourse is to go to YouTube, when you got somebody who's the same age as you trying to figure it out, and maybe they did one thing one time and it worked, and now they think that's something that they need to put in a book, can be dangerous, may not even fit for your situation. And so you end up having people who still feel alienated, even with more resources than we had. So you're not getting taught it in school, and certainly not at home. Are they, celebrating you or making you feel okay? And then when you go to these resources, they're sometimes wrong or ill-equipped on showing you the ropes or nurturing you into this. So you're just left lonely, alienated, still trying to figure this stuff out, and it's just it becomes a why we it's the reason why we do still have such high rates of people trying to take themselves out.
Um, so as someone who is an ally, and as someone who has had to change their language as it relates to my students, because students are more vocal about their identity. And I have had students that I've had to adjust how I address them and things like that. El Teddy, you know that I am one of the sponsors of the um gay straight alliance. We don't call
Hmm.
it that anymore, but just so that everybody knows what I'm talking about.
GSA. Hmm.
Um, and so I have a more intimate conversation with a lot of the students at my school, and I've been doing that for a couple of years now. And so I do have that intimate point of view. And I'm gonna say this: I know that everybody. Here's the reality: you don't have to agree with their lifestyle to make sure that they stay safe. Um, for the people, and let me know if I'm going too far, El Teddy. Let me know if you need to pull me back. But I say to the people that don't that are not concerned about our youth being safe, even if you don't agree with their lifestyle, I just think that you're an evil person. I just do. Um, yeah, I just that's just how I feel. From an education standpoint, because remember, we have separation of church and state allegedly in this country. From an education standpoint, how you choose to live your life is your business. What your religious beliefs are your business. But from an education standpoint, and I know that the things that our youth deal with and go through, so I definitely understand the need for more appropriate, more accurate. I mean, I went to a Catholic high school, so you already know what we got. We didn't get nothing. So our sex education was very, very. I mean, they taught us the rhythm method. I mean, just
Uh,
woo, yeah. That was pretty much the extent of what we got. We got the rhythm method. Uh, uh-oh.
I think
And we got a field
one.
trip to
Am I frozen?
go ahead.
Oh,
No.
I didn't know if
Are
I
you
was
frozen? I'm
frozen.
not.
Oh, okay.
Am I frozen? No, the internet. No, my I think my internet is being a little wonky. No,
Okay.
all I was saying was I forgot. Go ahead. I lost that last thought because the internet was acting wonky, and
Oh,
I was like,
I think one of the most jarring things that I think people don't realize, and I hope they heard it in the article, because a lot of, I tell my Gen Z mentees, a lot of them, they live in this bubble where they think we were always in the days that we are now. The article told you it wasn't until 2003 until the federal government had to say that you could not say that it was wrong and illegal to be gay. 2003. And you see still states like Texas refusing to do it.
in 2023, still dealing with it.
When 20 years later, and 20 years is not that long. 2000, we're talking 21st century. We were into the 21st century before this federal government would actually say that it was illegal. You to say that it was wrong. We were still living like they do out in Africa, where people are being jailed. But this is where we are.
Yeah, I mean, we were just talking about because in my psychology class we were talking about we're talking about the parts of the brain, and and so we were talking about the parts of the brain that deal with arousal, and we got on a whole conversation. It was one of those conversations that went left when I let it go left. But one of the things that came up in the conversation was that you know homosexuality was still considered a mental illness until the 1970s. It was in the DSM and did I say that right?
Hmm.
Yeah, I'm sorry. And we were talking about lobotomies because again, like I said, we were talking about the brain. So we were talking about lobotomies, and I was saying how your family members could legally, they could legally have you lobotomized to try to fix your mental illness, which was homosexuality. And again, that was the 1970s, which again was not that long ago when we're talking about the grand scheme of things, right? People born in the 70s are in their 40s now, right? So not that long ago. Unlike El Teddy, who was born in the 30s.
I'm not doing this with you. Mm-mm, mm-mm, mm-mm. I'm not doing this with you. between
Cam
you and
said, I
Tracy
really needed a
Chappelle.
really B or L Teddy when I was growing up, never feeling safe at school, hampered by my educational outcomes. Listen, baby, my love. Des, who works in public health now, said the current syphilis epidemic that nearly all states is dealing with is directly a result of undereducating all students. 74% increase between 2017 and 2021. Wow,
And
wow,
then
wow.
the sad part is they talked about these kids, going toward porn to learn things. That is not reality,
No,
sweetheart.
no.
Not at all. You're talking uh, a lot of these porn companies do be raw dogging it, like your girl, Sexy Red said.
Okay, okay, I get okay, okay, bring it down. Bring it down.
Well, what I'm saying is they're not using prophylactics. They're
Okay.
not having safe sex. That's the
Okay.
point that I'm making. God, I'm not going to go down that road. But and there are other safety concerns that you just don't see. And if you go into it thinking that it's like what you saw on the internet,
Right. It's
you're going to
not.
be
I
and
mean, that's just like when we talk about. I mean, I know. I mean, on the same role, but in a different aspect. We talk about what we see these celebrities, the pictures that they post, and the body pictures that are filtered and airbrushed, and it's not reality. That is not what they see when they look in the mirror. you know. Um. So yeah, you guys. So we have a few minutes before we get ready to head over to El Teddy's house. But let me pull up the spreadsheet for a quick second. I'm gonna just do a quick. I'm not gonna do a tally. I'm just gonna do a quick glance at our spreadsheet, which of course I have to add two articles today for the state of Texas. But
and
let's just do a
technically the
quick
third
little.
article did mention Texas as well.
It did. It did. Um, just as a quick glance. Okay. I'm gonna just do a count. I have we are on episode this is episode 11, I think. No, I'm sorry, we're in episode 17. So out of 16 episodes, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 articles are from the state of Florida out of 16 episodes. So we're averaging, this is one of the few episodes that we've had this year that didn't include an article from the
Actually,
state.
the fourth article that you missed, I think it was the first one I sent you. It was from Florida, so they actually would have made it today.
Oh, well, Florida, 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 which is El Teddy's state. Although he tries not to claim it, he claims Miami. He doesn't claim the state of Florida.
Damn, just saying.
Anyway, final words. We're going to get out of here. You guys meet us over at El Teddy's house. It's not too far down the road. You can walk it from here, you guys. It doesn't take that long to get there. But give us a I'm gonna give you the final word, Doc.
We're here. We're back. Whenever I say we're here, I want to do that old chant. We're here. We're queer. Get used to it. Whenever I say that, I just want to say that chant. Anyway, but we're still here, speaking truth to power, and always, being the uh, voice of reason out here, speaking about things that people aren't speaking about, and trying to make sure that you are informed and so forth. Yeah, that's all I got.
Well, until next time, farewell. So long, farewell.